To unpack the issue around cash-in-transit heists in the country, we're now joined by Thabang Bogopa from Unisa, and he is a cash-in-transit researcher, and he joins us via our video link. Thabang, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition. Perhaps many viewers are asking, what does the mind of a cash-in-transit heist person look like?
Thank you so much. We are speaking of a very complicated and complex mind, but also a very ruthless criminal who's willing to kill whoever that would come on their way while they're executing the criminal activity. And the motive, the major motive, is to get as much money as they can from these criminal activities.
When we look at these syndicates, I mean, just in the past few days, we have seen the 18 suspects which were arrested in Limpopo, and they are said to be part of a syndicate. At the same time, we've just played a story on air for our viewers where at least 3 police officers are said to be part of this gang of members who are involved in cash-in-transit heists. You know, when you look at an operation of this nature, how many people are usually involved and who is involved?
Thank you. For an operation of this magnitude, you do normally take around 15 suspects or 15 criminals of different characters. Here we are speaking of people who are able to shoot accurately, people who are able to drive, people who are able to operate the explosives and actually explode the CIT vehicle. We are speaking of people who have deep intelligence skills in terms of scouting and making sure that the area is consistent with how they've planned it. And we also have people who will drive the getaway cars and people who are so fast enough in terms of getting the money out of the cash-in-transit vehicle into the getaway car. And we now have the kingpins who will normally be at the lodges or at the guest houses where they will be waiting to receive the money. We also have often traffic officials and police officials who will help with disturbing the traffic while the people are running away, and also interception of the network. Often they intercept the network so that police cannot communicate properly. And there will also be those who do internal interception so that they listen to the police when the police communicate in response to the CIT vehicle. So it will be 15 at times to even close to 30 people involved in this.
How problematic is cash-in-transit syndicates in this country?
Yeah, CIT syndicates are a challenge, mainly, number one, because innocent people become victims. And we've seen that often when the investigation is happening while the crime scene is being managed, people who were randomly shot, people whose property were randomly damaged are neglected. So when we try to contain the situation, we never check who lost their eyesight, who lost the hearing as a result of the bombing and the shooting and all those other things, who was injured. And then secondly, the other greatest challenge is that more money is lost. If you check annually, there's around 470 million that's lost just due to CIT heist. So it is a very difficult crime to combat, but also the fact that whoever comes in the way of these CIT gangs will be shot with high caliber. So you might be driving to take your child to school and then you disturb them, they kill you. So they kill almost anyone who will disturb them, especially when they get away. But also, they also cause a lot of car accidents on the roads when they are doing their getaways after the commission of the criminal offense.
And, you know, when it comes to, you know, tracking them down, we saw a large operation taking place in Limpopo just last week where a number of suspects were actually arrested. What goes into actually tracking them down, especially in the operation we saw last week?
Oh, yes. It is what's normally known as intelligence, which is covert operations. Deep undercover operations have to happen. There must be informers who will inform the police officials that such activities being planned, and now there will be a coordination of the internal SABC units, various internal policing units. In the metros, it will also include the metro policing units, so that they can actually track down, as the CIT gangs are planning the police will be also counter-planning all those activities. It is often a concerted effort with the CIT companies. Their intelligence will also be briefing the police, and through such a concerted effort, that's whereby police are able to counteract that. But the challenge with South African legislation is that you actually have to stop them just before they do it, because if you stop them a day before they were about to execute their criminal activity, it will be difficult to prove to a court of law that these people were planning to actually hit a cash-in-transit vehicle 2 days to come.
And as we head into the festive season, when you're looking at your research, do you usually see a surge in the CIT heists, during this period when many are trying, to, I don't know, probably get a big, chunk of money just before the festive season?
Yes, thank you so much. You are so correct. And the other tricky part is that you'd find that at this time of the year, the people who are arrested, most of them are professionals, often business people, either in the taxi industry or in the taverns. And some of them, another dominant profile is that some of them, their children would be at university. So they are facing hefty fees that they have to settle. So towards the end of the year, you'll find professionals being arrested for such criminal activities because they were unable to make the money that they thought they would make during the year. And they have to, as a last resort to such a big criminal activity, which is the CIT heist. Because you'll understand that in one criminal activity of a CIT heist, people could get a lump sum of money. And that's where the greed and the motive comes from.
And earlier you said to us that the economy at least loses around 470 million rand. How does that impact the state of our economy when 470 million rand is, unaccounted for?
Yeah, it affects the economy a lot. We all understand that South African economy is not balanced. The South African economy is suffering. And now when you have so much amount which is often not going back, it will not be taxed, it will not go back directly to the GDP, it's a challenge to the country, especially when it goes to people in a manner that's unlawful. But also furthermore, it is a challenge because some of these companies are international companies which were doing business in South Africa, but also you start to see some companies no longer interested in transporting money for businesses. Remember, this is money that's being transported from a certain business district to a certain location. Now you start to struggle with businesses in remote areas no longer having people who are transporting money for them. You see ATMs in rural areas or in the smaller towns no longer getting cash. You'll go to a town, a smaller town, you go to Toyando, month end, all the ATMs do not have money. And that's because people are no longer confident enough to transport money to those areas because they know that they might be targeted at any time. So that's a very big challenge. It affects also the poorest of the poor who rely on this money for day-to-day living.